are in here now. So we'll take the report, of course, from Karen in the first place, who orientates us in relation to the business of the Academy. But then we're also going to have Mel bring us up to date on the Equality and Diversity Council. We've got an annual report on FTSU, which I think we're well briefed on fairly recently, so that's good. And then, of course, Fahim has an opportunity to return attention, anything regarding looking after that people. So that's what we're going to do now, and then we'll take a break for those that require a sandwich or something, some to eat. But so I turn to Karen in the first place then, and invite you to take us through this, Karen, please.
Thank you. So May, a very busy meeting. We did focus on outstanding pharmacy services. So John and Kate Lavery came, gave us a really brilliant presentation outlining what the OPS programme is. It launched in January. There were over 100 people, which is over 70% of the pharmacy team who joined the launch. And there were over 1,000 post-it notes of ideas and things around what outstanding looks like. And areas to address. There's 5 work streams overall: wellbeing and culture, education and training, digital, estate and equipment, and patient-centred care. So there was a development and definition phase from January up to June, and now we are in delivery, so the work stream delivery, and all of that is being led by pharmacy colleagues. And obviously there's some centralised support available from the transformation team as well, but that is now underway, so I'm sure we'll get regular updates. The other area that I was just going to focus on from there was the Res and Des reports. They were presented. So 3 priority Res areas identified around career progression and clinical roles, career progression, those roles 5 and under towards band 6 and 7, and then progression in clinical roles, development towards band 8A roles, and board representation as well. So just a few highlights. The Trust has exceeded its target of having a representative workforce. That's gone up to 38.22% versus 35% target. Increased ethnic minority representation at 8A and above, and notable increases in both clinical and non-clinical roles at 8A and 8D. Improved likelihood of ethnic minority staff being shortlisted for interview, and reduced numbers of ethnic minority staff experiencing harassment and bullying from colleagues as well. From an enablement perspective, disabled staff, increased representation at non-clinical bands 5 to 7, bands 8A and B by 3%, which is pretty significant, and clinical bands 8C, 9, VSM by 3% overall, and reduced likelihood of experiencing harassment and bullying from patients, public and line manager, and an overall feeling of value in the work that those individuals are doing as well. So still lots to do around race and disability, but the Academy acknowledged and celebrated actually the great improvements that have been made, and it is incremental step by step. Kez and I have just spent the last year doing diversity in healthcare, NHS partners, employers partners programme, and the last session was fantastic. So we're buzzing with ideas about how we can give all of this some oomph and take it to a different level as well. So we'll come back hopefully and talk about that at some point as well, Max. From a July perspective, we did talk about industrial action, and we talk about it at every Academy meeting, and you know, there's no underestimation of the impact it's having on people, those left behind and those who are striking as well. We talked a lot, so red area, certainly from July perspective, recruitment and retention. So there has been another drop in staff turnover, 10th month running as well, and it's now running at 11.43, but there are 277 nursing and midwifery band 5 vacancies, and that's up 30 from April. Obviously retention and attrition and recruitment contribute to all of that. 154 band 2 healthcare assistant vacancies as well, and the highest vacancies in nursing and midwifery are across those high volume areas, so emergency department, neonatal intensive care, but neonates will be back at full establishment by September. There's lots of recruitment ongoing, more international nurse recruitment. We've got 102 newly qualified nurses expected to start this September. 48 HCAs were offered between May and June following the launch of a new programme. Step into care, so this is around recruiting trainee HCAs, but with minimum qualifications and experience, and we'll support through local college and in-house training. And the Trust is also working with Skills House to support local communities to access employment as well. So an awful lot and a big wide net in terms of that recruitment. Long-term workforce plan will come to People Academy shortly, and Sean Willis quite rightly pointed out actually the value of retaining the Trust good people. And I'm trying to influence that at place level as well, because there's a big focus on recruitment, but if we can stop the backwater disappearing down the plug hole, it would be really, really effective, because that's where all the experience is. We also had a really deep dive around bullying and harassment and disciplinary at July's session. It is on the agenda at closed board, but just to give you a flavour really, 45 formal bullying, harassment and disciplinary cases between the 1st of April last year and the 31st of March this year were reviewed in detail. 44% of cases attributed to males, despite males only making up 23% of the Trust's workforce. Of the formal cases, 33% of bullying and harassment related cases and 48% of disciplinary cases involve people from an ethnic background. So what Fahim and the team have done is review every case in detail. There are a number of key themes. So the roles and responsibilities of line managers in nipping in the bud and creating a good culture of civility and respect, understanding cultural and other differences, the impact of unwanted and unprofessional banter and behaviour, fact-finding in the early stages to better understand dynamics, colleagues and team cultures, and the need for focus on well-being and a just culture approach as well. Some key actions coming out of that work around civility and a just culture: continued use of drama-based videos, which Kez introduced and were really, really effective. Briefing sessions around professional behaviour, cultural competency, a review of historical cases as well to draw on further learning. And there was a lot of talk around upskilling and supporting managers to make sure there's a consistent approach and to helping people deal with issues more informally. And Kat and Kez made a really great point on the importance of aligning and connecting all activities. So from an OD perspective, EDI, the HR teams, but alongside PSA and patient safety, particularly following this morning's conversation. So Samia Hussain, the Trust's new Associate Director of HR, joined the team very recently. She undertook these reviews, so she's not been involved in any of the cases, in any of the advice. So we took that as assurance around the independent view that was given, and we agreed future views would also benefit from the same independence, albeit probably not Samia as she integrates into the Trust. But actually we did question in detail around EDI, so we were assured there were no concerns that people had been disadvantaged because of their characteristics, which was really, really important. And then a couple of areas of good news: medical appraisal and revalidation. Ray gave a really great update around, and his team, around the 22-23 medical appraisal and revalidation performance, not without its challenges because of the pandemic, but the overall rate is 90.78% across 488 doctors who've got a connection with this Trust. Only 2 appraisals were unapproved, incomplete or missed. Both of those doctors have now engaged with the 23-24 process. 8.81% were approved, incomplete or missed. And challenges such as migration to new software, new appraisal format, workforce pressures impacting non-clinical activity, and an increase in the number of GMC connections based on short-term locum bank employees have been overcome. And all pre-pandemic processes have now resumed as well. There's an internal audit rating of assurance as significant, and 12 new appraisers, commendable report for the Trust among other trusts across all sectors. So actually you can see how we compare to others, albeit that data isn't particularly available yet. It's not really picked up again since pandemic, but actually when you look at, you go out and research, this trust does perform very well. And Ray was highlighting the creation of real value in that appraisal process as well. So moving away from admin and a heavy process to a focus on wellbeing and optimising the learning. So a significant change in how those appraisals are conducted. And then from a people experience perspective, lots of great work. I haven't listed it all in my report because it would have been pages long. But actually stability, looking after our people, robust action planning in response to the people survey results, the Thriving Together programme that Mel mentions. This is the NHS Culture and Leadership Programme, launched at the very successful Thrive conference. There's a new wellbeing group made up of SMEs from across the trust, and they're looking at a refreshed wellbeing offer, and that includes communication, enhanced care for night workers, greater support for managers on wellbeing matters, end of shift check-ins, night shift particularly, and post-trauma check-ins as well. And there will be a wellbeing week in September that hopefully we can join in on. And just to give a little bit more detail around the initiative, Mel also talked about reach in, reach out. So the execs and the direct reports will trial that first. And as Mel said, it will include shadowing and supporting internal, but also going out and understanding more about the community, and raising awareness of trust activities with the exec team, as well as providing the exec team opportunities to get out there too. And we were asked whether or not the NEDs should be involved. We said we'd bring it back here, but Altaf and I said yes. I think we'd love to be, and I think it would be really great for us to demonstrate some leadership in that area as well. And in terms of how the meetings have felt, very high contribution, conscious effort to move to summarising rather than presenting papers through, very rich, insightful content. So really productive and efficient in terms of the work that's done in advance and then how it manifests itself in the meeting.
Thank you, Ben. That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, do you want to take a poll now then, Kat, of NED colleagues who are here in respect of reach in, reach out? Would you wish to be involved or not?
I think that's unanimous.
Yeah, that's it. I know it can be a little bit pressure when you see like this, since I'm sure you'll tell them otherwise if not. But it would appear, I think, if you all on his to see us there, they would be happy to get that to be included. So, yeah, unanimous.
And we'll say the same if you ask us in private. So.
Yeah. Sometimes you've just got to nudge.
We already said yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're right. You're right.
Quick question from Chair Ray on medical appraisal and revalidation. So 1 in 10 of our doctors missed the deadline for getting the appraisal revalidation done. Is there a period of grace for the clinicians, or what happens to those that don't get it done in time?
So no, the times are set, absolutely. It's 31st of March, so even if it's 1 day late, you've missed it for that year. So everybody has an appraisal month. The expectation is really you should have your appraisal before the end of your allocated appraisal month, and you should definitely have it during the appraisal year, and it's a financial year effectively. The reality is that there are always very good reasons why people don't have an appraisal. So the doctors, the 8.81% who had an approved missed appraisal, so basically they come to Remy Akarili, who's our Associate Medical Director for Professional Standards, and myself as Responsible Officer, and we are asked to consider whether an appraisal could be an approved missed appraisal. The most common reasons for approved missed are long-term sick leave, maternity leave, of course, and the biggest group is doctors who have only just joined the trust. So if you join the trust in February, for example, there's no real way you're going to get an effective appraisal, a meaningful appraisal completed before the end of March. It's become a tick box exercise. So those are the three groups that have approved missed appraisals. So it wasn't that they chose not to do it, didn't engage. There was a very good reason why they couldn't have an appraisal. So out of 488, so we only had 2 doctors. What's that? 0.4%. that didn't have an appraisal and didn't have a very good reason for it. So they are the ones who didn't get round to it or didn't engage with the process as we would wish them to. 2 is an extraordinarily low number. So 0.4% is, you know, in the top decile performance nationally. It's very unusual to have such a low number. It's the lowest we've had, I think, since medical appraisal came in formally. I think 4 was the previous lowest we'd had. And those 2 individuals actually have a very good appraisal record. So for the previous however many years, they've always had an appraisal. And this year they didn't. Both those individuals had appraisals within a month of the end of the appraisal year. So I'm very apologetic and embarrassed that they haven't completed their appraisal. So we gave them an early appraisal for this 23-24 year. We can't do anything about last year, that's gone because of the strict timescales, but they've already had their appraisal for 23-24, so they've got them through. So what that means is, as I said, that's a fantastic performance. So far, we have been in the very good books with NHS England, and good appraisal performance means that we don't have to formally report every quarter about progress and how we're doing. Basically, we can just sign an assurance statement off each quarter to NHS England saying we are maintaining our performance. So that level of scrutiny which we might be subjected to is taken away. So we maintain that status as a high-performing trust that isn't under scrutiny from NHS England. So great performance. So Remy Akerele, fantastic job. She's doing the role that I was doing before I took on this role, and she's only better. And Nuri Azam, who's our appraisal manager as well. I'd just call out their names as doing a fantastic job. So we're in a really good position.
No, that's important detail. That was helpful to understand the process. And can there be a consequence of somebody who is not appraised or validated without good reason that they can't practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So so the important thing really is engagement. Everybody's appraisal quality of their portfolio perhaps will vary. You'll get some people with masses of information, some people with a smaller amount of information. Masses does not necessarily apply quality. And NHS England's helpful approach and the GMC's helpful approach really is that, as Karen's highlighted, that we don't want to be burdened with loads of meaningless information. It's more about, okay, you went to that meeting, what does it mean for you? How is it going to change your practice? What are you going to get out of it, rather than loads of notes and minutes that you can't look through. So it's about well-being, it's about quality rather than quantity of documentation. If you don't engage, then there are consequences. So as responsible officer, anyone I'm concerned about, we've got an escalation process internally, and in the last couple of years, I think there's only one doctor I've had to talk to the GMC about. So normally our internal processes work very well. But if we get to that point, I can talk to the GMC saying, I'm concerned about this doctor, they're not engaging with the process. What the GMC then can do is bring their validation date forward. So to say, okay, never mind 3 years' time, you're going to revalidate next year. And in order to revalidate, you have to have an appraisal portfolio. If they can't revalidate, they can't practice. And then there's a process called a Res 6 form, which the GMC will write to the individual and say, if you don't engage, we'll stop the process of removing your license. And that tends to focus minds really quickly.
That's really useful detail. Thank you. And what you certainly advise directors is our internal processes seem to work quite well, and indeed at the moment are performing quite highly. Obviously compared to the previous report. So pleased to hear that. Thank you. That was useful detail as well. Interested in the consequence of failure to revalidate. So thank you for that. Colleagues, any questions arising? So Mohammed, and then now. Mohammed, please.
I have 3 points, but one of them on the reach in, reach out are being covered, so I won't repeat that one. The other 2 points were around the dashboard. So there's some good news in terms of senior leader representation from ethnic backgrounds. We're up to 17.8%. I remember from when I started with the organisation, you used to have a dashboard and a target for senior leaders. I can't remember what that target is anymore. I'm not sure where that reporting is in terms of reporting to the board. I think it was meant to be 30-odd%, or 35%, might have been, I can't remember what the number was. I just want to see kind of, it'd be good to see where we are compared to that number and how we're doing and what we can do to achieve that. The other point was around something that I saw yesterday on social media, which is around an FOI report to trusts, looking at the numbers of being registered doctors that were being referred to regulatory bodies.
Yeah.
And the good news is, as Bradford was really, really good on that data. I mean, we had like 9 referrals compared to 90 at Pinderfield, Mid Yorks, in the same time period. I mean, that's extraordinary variance. So we don't, I mean, it looks good for us, it's great, so we're pleased about that. But it's kind of slightly concerning that a neighbouring trust has such high levels. And obviously that's something for them to look into. But I did think that was useful, kind of another measure, and you know, I thought it was a positive measure for us that we weren't an outlier in respect of the trusts. So yeah, just those 2 things I wanted to point out.
Thank you. Thanks. Do you have any views on either of those 2 points? Is it senior leaders and ethnicity?
Yeah, I can't remember what definition senior leaders is. It 8 A?
It's in the dashboard.
It's in there.
Yeah.
It sounds very system. You have to actually figure it out.
It's reflecting that 17% and it's referenced, but you can see the trend over time. It's in the section to be the top 20% of employers in quality and diversity. So there's the ethnic minority senior leaders metric, and then there's the ethnic minority workforce metric, which is pretty much quoted around the sort of 35%.
Thank you. Thanks. It's 17 for the
Currently, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's great. Thank you for that, Alan. Yes. So that's where that's held. So we've got that one hammered hopefully. And then the referrals issue, the extraordinary variance between a couple of trusts. I don't know whether perhaps a bit hard to answer this off the top of your head, but does it mean anything to repayment?
I think it's very positive data from our perspective. It shows that actually our processes seem to be working, and we are treating staff equally fairly. So it's not, you know, there might be a number of reasons why in a neighbouring trust they might have significantly higher numbers, but I think from our perspective it's good to see that we're not an outlier and we're performing well on those statistics. And I think this really for me is the conversation that we've just had before, that Karen was talking about around the scrutiny we've applied to our investigations, and the conclusion that we reached that actually we don't think there's any concern around staff from ethnic minorities being treated less fairly than any other staff group. And I think this kind of supports that narrative in terms of actually we've done those checks and there isn't anything that's indicating we are being overzealous in terms of referring staff from any one particular background excessively.
So we may be a significant low outlier in that reporting. So we know that. We should be careful with the issue. We should perhaps refer to Pinderfields. We could refer to the fact that a neighbouring trust appears to have significantly more during a period of interest. Do you know when that period is?
I can dig it out. It was, I think, data was by quarter, but it's a 10 times variance. I mean, that's massive.
Yeah.
And it may be an issue perhaps in terms of place. You know, to understand, there may be some kind of explanation behind the data, but it just seems on the surface of it, an extraordinary level of variation from trust to trust in the same region.
Yeah, so I don't propose this as an action for board, but Faye, could I maybe suggest, you can reject this if you want, but perhaps you could make an informal inquiry regarding that period of time, in the spirit of just trying to find out whether there was something happening at a neighbouring trust at that time, and therefore whether it teaches us anything about what we may want to be vigilant to. Yeah.
Yeah, I can certainly make the inquiries. I think it's probably quite a sensitive topic to be for the neighbouring trust to be commenting on. So yeah, in terms of whether I get,
I'm conscious of that.
Get with it.
Yeah.
But certainly
I think that would be an appropriate inquiry. It's a significant difference over a period that you're not asking for detail, but just whether there's anything we might learn or indeed they might learn from what we've got in place. So let's do that. And if you feel able to respond to Mohammed regarding his perfectly reasonable point, then great. But I understand it's a sensitive inquiry to make. Can please, yeah.
So obviously the data is in the dashboard and it does break down as well the pipeline, Mohammed, and you'll find it on the People Academy papers. So we do split ethnic minority workforce by group and band, and there's some sort of static information in there, and there's work to do around the resident days. I just really want to make a point, and it's probably a little bit contentious, that we do measure ethnic background. There are other characteristics that we don't measure as much. So there is a female workforce by band, and obviously the female workforce makes up the lower bands, and predominantly there's a gender imbalance at the top of those ratings as well. But we don't necessarily talk about sexual orientation, for example, but they're all equally important. There are a lot of characteristics that we don't cover in our information, and I understand it's here because we want to be reflective of our population, but our population is wider in terms of diversity as well. So I think there's work to do on the dashboard. I think there's work to do to make it truly inclusive. Absolutely. And if we really want to be diverse, I think we've got to focus on a lot more than ethnic background.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. And I think generally we would endorse your position from People Academy perhaps of raising those discussions and looking at a wider, more inclusive analysis.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you for that. It's an informal inquiry to make. It's perfectly reasonable. It's an interesting point. Yeah, and indeed was, well, most of it publicly available, the information. So, yeah, okay. Are we all happy with Faith? Should I just check with you whether there's anything else arising from Business People Academy May and June?
So in terms of the June meeting, I think on the 5th of July, I was actually on leave, so I couldn't really add anything to Karen's report there. It's away some
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah. It was just whether there's anything arising within people the last couple of months that you don't want to highlight. That's fine. Clearly, we're doing that during the course of these things. Okay, colleagues, happy with the briefing? Very useful briefing. Thank you. Yeah.
Just to flag up also, we've got a couple of national shout-outs this week. So I know on Monday there was a regional roadshow, but it was attended by national leaders, Amanda Pritchard, in which we were speaking about all the work that we're doing on our employee experience. And yesterday, Wilkinson Rice, who's the National NHS Lead for People, published her blog, and there was quite a substantial section all about the work we're doing on staff experiences, including reference to outstanding theatres and all the stuff that we're doing on the People Promise, which is really positive. So,
that's okay.
Attracting national recognition.
That's what we need. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, which endorses what we're doing there, doesn't it? Also, thanks for that. Colleagues, happy to go to item 15? Yeah. So Mel, we'll turn to you again and forcing diversity.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to leave at
yes.
1:30, so hopefully we'll be able to cover this and any questions. I don't believe you got the paper, is that right? And that's because our scheduled meeting had been postponed as a consequence of the instruction, and we only had it on Tuesday. So helpfully the team have put me some notes together, which essentially is the report, but we didn't want to table it, so we'll put forward next month. We had a great meeting then on Tuesday. Some of the highlights, and it's great to see actually the connectivity between this agenda and that Karen's just described. So I won't sort of go into too much detail about things like residents, but we did talk about that in the context of the I agenda specifically. And we heard from our staff network, so LGBT plus staff network, which is continuing to gather momentum and attract membership. Due, of course, is Pride Month. They had the Bradford Pride event on the 8th of July. And what I was really pleased to hear from Abby, who's the chair of that group, and the team, is that off their own bat, all of the LGBT plus networks across the public sector in Bradford District and Craven have come together to put together a collaborative. So they manned a stall in the city square and have their own logo on all t-shirts and have branding, etc. Nobody instructed them to do that. That's fantastic. That's exactly what you would want networks to do, and that was really positive. They also, as did all our staff networks, have a really prominent presence at the Thrive Leadership Conference as well. And so they were able to share some lovely pictures of the work that they've done in the Pride event. Our Resin network, again, that's up to 129 members now, the Resin network. So it is growing in number and has a number of activities planned. Concourse events, we've got the annual Filipino celebration event coming up, and exploring ideas for a new dedicated resin conference. Sadly, Rakaya, who is the chair of the Resin Network, is leaving us to take a comment called Teaching Hospitals as their head of midwifery, which is great news for Rakaya. We're hopeful that there will be quite a lot of interest already being expressed about chairing that in Palmvale departure. And then the Enable Staff Network, which has been the weaker of all our networks in terms of its membership, has begun to grow, and we've managed to secure co-chairs for that. So we've got Susan Parker, who's Deputy General Manager for Urgent Care, and Sonia, who is our EDI Manager, who are going to do that together, which is really good. But notwithstanding the sort of small but perfectly full nature of that network, they are making their mark. And on the 10th of May, we celebrated Staff National Network Day in the concourse and exhibited fantastic display, photography exhibits, and they have put together a really powerful video, which again is attracting regional national attention for its impact. And we were able to share that at a regional disability boards event on the 19th of June at Magna, and that's attracted an awful lot of attention. We had a health inequalities update, and that included also the Core 20+5 update that was provided by Joe House. And it was great to see the synergies between what we're doing on our health inequalities approach internally with what's happening in the community for those Core 20+5 areas. We had a bit of an update on our EDI strategy and its launch. Again, I won't go into the rest of this detail, but the final thing I will say is the NHS published its EDI improvement plan in June, and we received that plan, and we asked that it will go anyway to the people committee, because what we need to do is, and in many respects, because of what I'm just describing now and heard, we are ahead of the game in this particular area, but it's got 6 key objective areas, many of which we've touched on in this discussion over the last 20 minutes. So what we've asked for is a gap analysis, really, of anything that they are expecting from a national point of view that we are not already doing or need to do more of. And that's the update.
Thank you very much, Stella. Thanks. Any comments, questions, thoughts arising? John, please.
Just a very one quick comment, Max, if I may, and I think it's commendable now the progress that's been made. It shouldn't go without noting that the fact that you show proactive leadership on this, I think does empower people to do things like you mentioned about the self-organisation of the group which is I think that's, it's fantastic. So I don't know, just the Gateway Group, the collaborative and the stall,
Oh,
they
yes,
have gone back.
Yeah.
I think it's the confidence that comes from you leading on this stuff and doing that organically, that, you know, I'm sure you've lots of things you could be doing, but I just want to commend that man, so I think, yeah, it is one of the big reasons why it's crucial.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? No? Happy to take that report, thanks very much, yeah. Now you need to, yeah. Thank you. And we'll move to item 16, Freedom to Speak Up annual report. So with yourself, please note the contents of the report and the concerns that have been raised during 22-23. Karen, with you, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try and finish us bang on time. So Karen's already touched on this. It's previously been presented at People Academy. And we also had our board development session that was around Freedom to Speak Up as well, where we talked about a lot of this too. And that work is being written up to bring back as well. So the trends over the years have been similar to other years. We see a mix of not just patient safety concerns, but we also see concerns in relation to incivility and bullying. But some key recommendations to pull out really. So first of all, I think the Freedom to Speak Up group does a great job of advertising what they are doing and spends time getting out there. And there's a real diverse group that's included within that. So what they've tried to do over the last 1 to 2 years is make sure that our staff group is appropriately represented at that sort of ambassador level, so the level that sits below Sue, which is good. She's got a good mix of people there. We also started at the request last year in policy monitoring. So we also, it's small numbers, so it's really hard to make real sense of it, but we are routinely collecting now policy monitoring data if people wish to share that, which I think is a real positive. And again, it's just another of those safeguards so we can check if we feel that people are being treated differently on the grounds of a protected characteristic. We've talked about the staff survey results, we've talked about those in committee as well. So there has been a drop-off in the answers that they use to see what sort of speaking up culture that you have. Nevertheless, even though we've dropped down, we're still at the top end nationally anyway. So it's not that we've dropped down into the bottom 20%, we're still doing well. So it's still a positive. It shows that we can improve. It always starts nicely. Another positive to pull out is the fact that we've got 2 Freedom to Speak Up ambassadors in maternity, in midwifery services, and also student midwives as well. And that was a recommendation from Rockingham. So that was around the concerns into maternity safety nationally. Sort of 2 areas where the Guardian is asking for support going forwards is one is around getting the message out and getting people to do training. So there's 3 levels of training, we should have all done that now, but it's getting other people to do it as well. And that's something that we keep on pushing, although probably not mandate, but encourage people to do so. We can probably link into our leadership modules as we're going further as we develop the CSUs. And then finally, just sort of an acknowledgement that, you know, when Freedom to Speak Up started, it was very reactive. It was about listening to concerns, and the space that we're in now is that one of, there is reactive but proactive as well, where we're actively going out and seeking things. So the roadshows, the going to wars and departments, and this is where those softer concerns sometimes that you hear about. Sometimes the Freedom to Speak going and holding up the roadshow, lots of things come out and then start to look and speaking more there. So I'll pause there for any questions, but I think we've had a good airing, and again, a very good piece of work for the team, with thanks to Sue Franklin.
Thank you very much, Karen. Yeah, I think we've been pretty well briefed recently for an NCSU with the recent development session, and of course I won't read through each recommendation, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things mentioned. It just pulls out particular points that I want to get from the annual report. John, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I didn't really have a question, I just wanted to see if I could compete with the lawnmower.
You doing
Right, you
that?
have, that's right, yeah, next one.
Yeah, it was about the equality monitoring, Karen, and whether
Yes.
you'd noticed any improvement in two things really. One is confidence in terms of people coming forward, and also given the work we've done on equality, an understanding of why it's important.
I think it's really, really hard, because, you know, free speak up in a way is a lot last resort. So if you have small numbers, does that mean that people don't want to come forward, or does that mean that people are using Datex, the line managers and other systems as well? So that's really difficult. I think all we can do is be as proactive as possible and supportive as possible. What we do get is repeat business. So people will approach me directly or Sue directly and say, oh, such a body came to speak to you. So they suggested it might be good if I came and spoke to you as well. The other thing that we find is that in fact, we know that the message is getting out more, because sometimes we'll see, like, you know, my educational supervisor told me to go to Freedom Speak Up, or my matron suggested Freedom Speak Up. So again, you know, people are recommending Freedom Speak Up, and it's probably in those cases where that individual feels unable to help manage that circumstance themselves.
Thank you. Is that all right, John? Yeah, after that, thank you, Karen, yeah. Anything further, please?
Just a quick comment question about the student ambassadors, and so,
Yeah.
and are there any value, have you thought of those student ambassadors in other areas, so medical students or pharmacy
So
students or?
We have, and we've asked in the past, and they've not always been forthcoming. I think because of Ockenden, that was sort of an impetus to get that in place in midwifery. And there've been some concerns raised from midwifery students about 12 months ago now, around some incivility issues in one area. And I think that enabled us to encourage people to become a guardian. So that the short answer is yes. The longer answer is we should probably go out and try again, because it is working in that area.
Yeah, and presumably that the university, certainly the medical school, these could work to try and,
Yeah,
you know, on both ways, because it benefits us and benefits
yeah.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Yeah, it's under review, but Karen will be pushing for that, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Any other points, thoughts, queries that arise? Yeah? Some good developments there, isn't there? Very pleasing with maternity ambassadors. And that's a bit of good news, isn't it? Amongst others, yeah, amongst other good news. Okay, yeah, everybody's happy with that. Thank you. So we endorse, as asked in the recommendations, the Freedom to Speak Up annual reports, and we thank those that are putting the time and effort into to get that right here. So thank you. Last item of people then, please, is opportunity for Fahim, who's of course acting up as our Director of HR. Anything you want to bring to our attention in terms of looking after our people, Fahim? It's a standing item reflecting the importance for us.
Yes, so we do have a looking after our people group established across the organisation. So as part of that, we include a number of different services that contribute to that. But there's a few highlights I do want to bring to your attention. So the Thrive website that we've got, we are looking at refreshing that portal. So we're working with the University of Bradford. We've got some funding to revamp that and expand it really. I think from where it started off to what we've got in it now, it's expanded significantly. So for us, it's a refresh and to ensure that it's still accessible and easy to access for our staff. So that's happening at the moment. It's a really, really useful site that we've created. It's a single site access point for a number of initiatives. So we're doing a refresh of that at the moment. So the refresh will include sort of EDI information that isn't quite easy enough to find at the moment on there. Information about our Spark team and the support that they can offer. So we're looking to do that, and once we have got a refreshed version, we will update. We've got a pilot at the moment that we're taking part in. We're one of 3 trusts across the country who are looking at flexible working pilot. So this is team-based rostering, so self-rostering for teams. To support services to have a flexible working approach for our role-based staff. So the idea is that individuals will be able to select their own work shift patterns, etc., and to take collective responsibility as a team to do that. That's actually in pilot at the moment, so we'll see how that plans out, and hopefully that will give us a bit to expand that further. Callum's mentioned earlier, I think, the well-being group that's being established. So I won't labour on that, but that's a really important piece of work for us. We had training in May around civility at work. So civility training, ground-based civility training took place in May. Some videos have been produced as a result of that as well, which is really useful material for us, and that helps us with that civility culture that we're trying to embed. And then, of course, in June we had our Thrive conference, which I think we've discussed previously. The Thrive conference took place in June, really well attended, great day. It was followed by our long service awards that evening as well. So for colleagues who've had 30 years plus service within the NHS, we had an evening where we recognised their service and thanked them for that. I think that is the bulk of what I wanted to update the board on. Happy to take any questions.
So, thanks for hearing the important work. Anything arising from our support of colleagues in terms of looking after our people? No? Very usefully picked out 2 or 3 years there, yeah?
But since sorry, I've just realised there's one really important thing that I have missed out. Is actually we've opened the garden at Costa, so we're improving rest facilities across the trust for our staff to ensure that when the staff aren't having breaks, they've got somewhere nice to go and have their lunch or have a break. And we refreshed 3 other areas and improved rest facilities for staff. We'll continue to do that. We've got some additional funding to look at external outside spaces as well. And you'll see this work outside here taking place by iSpace facilities colleagues to improve rest facilities. So that's another piece of work that I think is really important to highlight.
Great stuff. Thank you. Thanks, yeah. And thanks again for the work you're going to do on the demographics of our staff to better understand and improve the data on that. That's important. Okay. Everybody happy? Okay. Yeah. Nothing further? Thanks. That's a good briefing. Thanks, Steve. That's great. Okay. Time for a break. Shall we still say that we'll get back at 2 o'clock? Shall we make it 20 minutes? Is that okay?